purpose of every great being is to guide seekers on the path to liberation. One may say, well, what path of liberation? Here, the Western mind or the scientific mind kicks in. Oh, maybe we have Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta, we have Shaiva, Kashmir Shaiva, we have in the West, we have traditions of Christianity and Judaism. And if we go farther back, we have traditions of the ancient philosophers of Athens. By the way, whom I'm studying now profusely in ancient Greek, because if you want to read the original writings of a great path, one ought to be able to read it in the ancient language. I was fortunate to have been trained in ancient Greek, so after a bit of effort, I can read Attic Greek fairly well. But in any case, again, the purpose of the birth of a great being like Swamiji is to guide us, to lead us to the path of liberation. And as we begin this very short introduction of some sort, now it's less than 40 minutes, I would like to concentrate primarily on the breath. The breath is the great gift of the God, of the goddess, I should say. The breath is a great gift of the mother of the universe, whom we dearly call Shakti. And the father of the universe is the great self of all, Shiva. So this sounds perhaps to some of you as a little bit strange. And somebody's asking in the chat which Swami am I referring to? Of course, Swami Sarvananda, who else? Anyway, so the question arises, what is the breath? What really is the meaning of the breath? Well, before we get to the meaning of the breath, let's just talk about the necessity of breath for life. Without breath, well, maybe we, in other words, if we stop breathing, maybe we will last 45 seconds, maybe a minute. Whales can last several minutes because they can take deep breaths and go down to the depths of the oceans, but human beings would have a little bit less than that. And so the breath, as the breath comes in and the breath comes out, if we just follow the breath, and let's do this for a few minutes. And as you notice, today I have no slides. The reason I did that is because if you saw slides, everybody tries to copy everything down in a slide, and it's just mission impossible. And most of the things I'm saying now are in a book that I will refer to you in a little bit. But in any case, the breath is perhaps the most essential friend of ours. It's really the mother of the universe. She is, and I like to refer to the mother and to the deity as she, because she's the one who creates everything. And again, I mentioned it a while ago. Shakti. Shakti means energy, means divine energy, means unlimited energy that has no bounds. Shiva is the great self of all. So Shiva and Shakti is the eternal couple. They never get divorced, unlike human beings. They support each other. And Shiva, of course, is the great, as I just said, the great self of all. The inner self, the inner king. And Shakti is the inner queen, the inner goddess. She is the creatrix of the universe. She creates everything. The breath of life, as we listen to our breath, and I invite you now, since we don't have slides, to, if you like, to close your eyes. It's one of the advantages of not having slides. You don't have to see outside, so close your eyes. Or let's close our eyes for joining in just a second. And we just listen to our breath. And our breath has three components, if you like. It has one component that is the in breath. It has one component that is the out breath, and then it has a component that is between the two. Or if you like, it has a component that's the out breath first and the in breath, and always a point between the two, which is a point of total peace where the breath stops. Our breath stops momentarily. If you meditate, and if you have meditated for many years, at some point your breath may stop for a long time. Do not panic. Great yogis tell us that when the breath stops, the self reveals himself or itself. So the sound of the breath, we can sort of listen to it. It makes a sound so hum. I'll repeat it just a little bit more. So hum. And the other side of the breath is hamsa. Hamsa means I am that. Ham means that. I am that. Soham means that am I. So Hamsa is I am that, and Soham is that am I. That am I am that, that am I am that is the eternal cycle of the breath. Who is that and who is I and who is am? Well, am is the verb, is a link between the I and that. I, of course, we all know what I is. We are all I. We can call it we. Sometimes I prefer to call us we rather than I, because these days we're too much into the ego. But in any case, we or I is the same thing. We are. So Hamsa means I am that. Soham means that am I. And along with those two components, as I just said, we have the point of stillness. In the middle of the breath, if you want to touch the sternum right here and follow your breath, you will, of course, notice, and you probably have done it already many times, that as the breath comes in and momentarily stops, and then it goes out again, in and out, in and out. How many times? Many times. Yoga say about, if I'm not mistaken, 26,000 times a day. So many, many breaths. And when the breaths stop, then it's time to go home. Where is home? Home is everywhere we are. Home is here, home is there, home is everywhere. So this understanding is provided to us by Swamiji, our leader at Shivananda Ashram in the Bahamas. And the meaning of the breath is I and that, I being the subject and that being the object. But as you see, when we reverse it and the object becomes first, then it's the object and the subject. Because in fact, the object and the subject are tied together in an eternal cycle. We should give up the idea that one is first and the second is, and the other is second. That just doesn't hold. They successively follow each other. The same way that the waves in the ocean, I'm here in the beautiful island of Crete. I wish I were in the Bahamas, maybe next year, because sometimes I spend Swamiji's birthday in the Bahamas. But here in the beautiful island of Crete, I'm looking outside over there where the harbor is, where the Mediterranean Sea is, and you see the waves. They keep coming and going, keep going and going, keep going and going, on and on and on. What are the waves? The waves are nothing more than vibrations of the water, the vibrations of the ocean. The ocean is water. In physics or in chemistry, we call it H2O, two hydrogen atoms and one oxygen atom. That's water. Water, of course, is the substance of our bodies. 75% or so of our body is made of water. And this is one of the reasons why we can easily float rather than sink, because they're mostly made of water. Water is the giver of life, and the breath is the giver of life. We're not going to go too much into the various elements, Those will be examined later on. And on this occasion, let me just point out that uh, during next winter, in February, we're going to have Mahashivaratri, which is the night of Shiva, where we spend all night chanting the names of Shiva. So let's actually chant the name of Shiva, but in a silent way. I will be repeating the great mantra. It's called the five syllable mantra, Namah Shivaya, Namah Shivaya. You can repeat uh, yourselves in a silent mode, Namah Shivaya. As you see, it's five syllables, Namah Shivaya. What about Om? Well, Om is the universal sound. Om is the birth and the sustenance and the reabsorption of the universe. Aum, Aum, Aum is Om. So Om Namah Shivaya is also called the Panchakam mantra, the five-syllable mantra. And you can, or we can, listen to Namah Shivaya or repeat it silently. And in fact, if we are walking, you can use japa and in the following way. We just demonstrated Om Namah Shivaya, 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 Om Namah Shivaya. The great five-syllable mantra not only reveals the inner self, but it also protects the repeater of the mantra. And also, when we realize that the mantra, the person who repeats the mantra, and the goal of the mantra are one and the same. Usually, this is a triadic system. We think of, well, okay, I am repeating, I'm different than that I'm repeating, and the way I'm repeating it is different, but in fact, they're not. So Namah Shivaya, the great five-syllable mantra, is the mantra of great beings. It led many, many, and is still leading countless of beings to the path of liberation. Here, we're extremely fortunate that in the great ashram of Shivananda, the great master in the Bahamas, uh, Shivananda is, of course, Shiva, the bliss of Shiva. We use Om Namah Shivaya all the time. But it's also important to remember that Namah Shivaya is a repetition by the great goddess because God and goddess are not really different. They're two different aspects. And human beings, human mind, we always think of, of separation. We always think of different things. We always think, oh, high and low, up and down, rich and poor, good guy, bad guy, dark and light. We think of, oh, I'm poor and I'm rich, oh, I am dummy or I'm very smart, whatever, the dualities. So we are immersed in dualities, but the dualities the great beings teach us are nothing else than the creation of the mind. I will repeat it one more time, or maybe two times. These differences are nothing more than the creations of the mind. These differences are nothing more than the creation of the mind. In truth, the differences don't really exist except to juxtapose, except to give us, in a way, to expose us to the different aspects of living. So the differences are not really bad, but when the mind latches onto the differences and becomes a slave of the differences, then there's a problem. Then I'm not going to go into politics, but see what is happening to the world today, right? We're immersed in dualities. We're immersed in issues that seem not to be resolved very easily. But this is not the topic of our discussion for the very simple reason that in an ashram, in a holy ashram, uh, like here in the holy ashram of Swami Shivananda, we focus really on the positive aspects. We focus on the aspects that uplift ourselves and not the ones that sink us down. There are many aspects of the universe. There is heaven, there is hell, there is the level of earth where we inhabit. And the level of the earth, my teacher, Swami Muktananda, used to say, it's very important because it's only through a human birth that you can achieve liberation. However, it won't happen automatically. It's like you say, well, I know how to drive a car, so since I know theoretically how to drive a car, the car can drive itself. Well, that will not happen, of course. You have to sit on the seat, turn on the engine, blah, 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 and drive the car. So the driver, the person sitting next to the driver, and the vehicle, if I can use this triad or this triadic way of looking at the vehicle that carries through life, is what moves us through life. Okay. So I'd like to take the opportunity now. I'm going to not go more than 10 or 15 minutes, go through some of the great teachings of two great beings that I very much value. One is Swami Muktananda and the other Swami Shivananda. And in some ways, I have been very fortunate to um, have met them. Of course, Swami Shivananda I did not meet, but Swami Muktananda I met. But I have met them in a subtle way, in the mind way, and then the teachings that they give us are so profound. So I'm going to be reading some um, of their teachings from this book that I happen to be the author. It's called Science, Reality, and Everyday Life. And there are actually copies in the bookstore. I'm not promoting the book, but um, if you would like to know a little bit more, and it's published by Pink Integer Books in Concord, California, and it's designed by Prisma Press in Oroville, India. So here's some readings from triadic reality. Triadic because um, reality is really three aspects. Actually, it's also five aspects. But this we don't have time today to go through. So, but if you take three and five, they make the number eight. And number eight is very significant because when you add on one, you get nine, and nine is a great holy number of the universe. So here are some of the readings. Self-realization, I would like to ask you to sit back, relax, with the back straight, close eyes if you like, you don't have to, and listen to the words of the masters. These are not my words. I'm only carrying here, I'm transponding, I'm bringing forward, I'm the messenger, if you like, the messages from the great beings. So here is one of the great statements. Self-realization is the supreme purpose and real meaning of life. When a person suffers from a sense of imperfection or lack of meaning in the material achievements of life, he longs for something else. He longs for higher ideals and attainments. These days, we seem to just be in the material realm. Material this, material that, money here, money there. But actually, all of these are not the real thing because when we finish life on this earth, how many of these materials to take together with us? How much money to take with us? We take this much, zero. We don't take anything with us. So why are we so immersed on the material aspects of life? Because through materiality, we can witness the great beyond, the great Vedanta, the great uh, purpose of life. So what is the purpose? What is the ultimate goal of life? This series of antiquity, this series particularly from India, the great country of the sages, of profound wisdom, have said that to be entirely rid of pain, suffering, and sorrow, and to attain the full measure of absolute bliss is the real goal of all beings. How profound. To attain the absolute bliss of real is the real goal. These days, we don't seem to be following the absolute bliss as the goal of life. We seem to be following everything else. So, moving on, um, she, I'm talking about the great mother, Shakti. She alone, the Shakti alone, knows herself, and she alone is fully aware of her own true nature, her own greatness. The great mother knows herself, and following the path of the mother, following the path of the self, we're striving to know ourselves. All the Vedas, since in this great ashram, we follow the Vedantic tradition. All the Vedas say that this self is Brahman. All this self is Brahman. Ayamatma Brahma. Ayamatma Brahma. Therefore, the entire universe is nothing but the Lord Himself, is the absolute truth that one can experience divine bliss, universal consciousness, by following the path shown by the Guru. And here comes the great word Guru. The Guru is the teacher, the Guru is the one who guides, the Guru is the one who takes us from darkness, Gu, to light, Ru. Guru. The Guru is the teacher. We're not talking about any teachers. I happen to be myself a teacher, a scientific teacher, but I actually follow now the great teachers for several decades, as a matter of fact. And now I'm immersed in reading the ancient teachings of the great philosophers of ancient Greece, profound teachings of Plato or Platon, as they call him in Greek, and Aristoteles or Aristotle. And both of them were the followers of the great Socrates of Athens. Now, what is a true disciple? A true disciple has the understanding of discrimination and non-attachment. Discrimination is viveka, and non-attachment is vairagya. Are the two main qualifications of one who wishes to be a disciple. So, if you want to be a teacher, you have to first become a disciple. Nowadays, everyone wants to be a teacher, right? Particularly universities. Oh my goodness, everybody at university is a teacher. Oh, I know this, I'm that. You have to follow me. And sometimes we tell the students to follow us as teachers when the students know way more than we do. That's another story, though. So it takes a big thing to become a disciple. To understand the true meaning of Vedanta, which contains the eternal truths, is supreme among scriptures, describes the four bodies. We will talk about that next February when we get to talk and immerse in the teachings of Shaiva and a little bit of Vedanta, because Vedanta, you get it here in full force. So I tend to give more on Shaiva. So there are four bodies, the gross, Shola, the subtle, Sukshma, and the causal, Karana, and the supracausal, Mahakarana. The supracausal is a true self, is a true body. The mysterious Chitti, the mother of the universe, taken the form of a mantra like Om Namah Shivaya or Soham or Hamsa, resides in the syllables of the mantra. So the great teachings tell us that the mantra and the syllables are the words of the goddess. Swami Shivananda, in his great treatise, The Mind, discusses the mysteries of the mind and ways to control it. He actually, being a great scientist himself, in the ancient understanding of of who really a scientist is, who is a true philosopher, and Swami Shivananda was certainly that, as well as his disciple, Swami Vishnu. So Swami Shivananda, in his great book, The Mind, discusses the mysteries of the mind and how to control it. You may say, why control the mind? Well, if we don't control the mind is going to control us. Okay, simple as that. Two choices. Whatever you hold in your mind will be produced in the physical body. Oh, my goodness. And it says further down, the root of all evils is identification with the body. There was a great being called Buddha, Lord Buddha, Sakyamuni Buddha, who said the root of all evils is the identification with the body. Let's take this a little bit further. Why is that a problem? The problem is not necessarily the body itself, but the identification with the body, because the body is just a vehicle. It's a vehicle of itself. And then we have the characteristics of the mind. The mind can be sattvaki. Sattvic mind means pure mind, or we can have the characteristic of rajasic mind, and even worse, tamasic mind. A rajasic mind is the one that we're mostly familiar with, is the mind, thoughts. But sattvic mind is the one that is really the driver, is the pure mind behind it. And the mind alone creates differences, and they come from memory. So we will talk at length later on when I have a chance a little bit about what the mind is. The mind is seems to be creating everything, but actually the mind um, is driven by Atman. In fact, it's driven by Paramatman, by the great self. The great self, as you will hear later on, has many names. Paramatma, Parabrahman, Paramashiva, Great Shakti, and so on and so on. So at this point, I would like to stop and spend the next roughly 5 minutes opening the floor to all of you. I realize that we cover a lot of ground, but here we are. Whatever comes to you as a first thought, that is probably a valid way to continue. So I'm open to you, Swamiji, or Raj will pass around the microphone, and I am at your disposal. And when my time is up, Swamiji will, Swami Brahmananda, hello, we'll see. Swami Brahmananda will give me a sign that it's time to stop. Okay.
Om Namah Shivaya, Menas. Thank you so much for the talk
Swamiji.
and for honoring Swamiji's birthday. Thank you so much. And I wanted to ask you, please, you discussed in the past, and it's something which I know has been intriguing science and philosophy for a long, long time. Because in the past we know that science tried to, at least as much as I know, tried to avoid entering the question of consciousness and to remain more objective, or in some scientists' cases materialistic, but through quantum mechanics, and especially how the fathers of quantum mechanics, the Copenhagen interpretation, brought consciousness very powerfully. And can you please explain to all of us in a layman's way the topic of how actually consciousness is now unavoidable in the topic of quantum mechanics?
Thank you, Swamiji, for the question. Yes, you're absolutely right. It's actually the central core of quantum mechanics. And I would add that it's also the central core of general relativity of Einstein, the other great sister or brother of quantum mechanics. But in quantum mechanics, the role of the mind is very crucial, particularly following the Copenhagen interpretation, which I believe, and most physicists, if you talk to most physicists, will agree that the main and probably maybe the only interpretation of quantum mechanics is the Copenhagen interpretation, named after Niels Bohr, whose city was Copenhagen, and who actually had great arguments with Albert Einstein for many years, for about 40 years, as to the meaning of the mind. But the mind is the one that asks the questions and brings forward various aspects of reality. When I say mind, and you use a more correct term, you said consciousness. When I use the word mind, I mean capital mind, not little mind, not the ego trapped mind, but the great mind of the great self. And and in fact, if we go a little bit deeper into this, there's really only one kind of mind. That's the way there's only one kind of water, whether it is river or just two molecules of water, or the great ocean. Water is water. But in any case, in quantum mechanics, the point is that we ask the question of connecting the object to the subject, always the same thing. The observer observes something and concludes from the observation certain aspects of the reality. Now, these certain aspects of reality are not universal. They do depend a lot on the person who asks the questions. But of course, it's not just wild subjectivity, anything goes. In this subjectivity, there is a solid foundation of objectivity. And this is the dilemma here, because we think of object and subject separate, but quantum mechanics tells us that they are two aspects of the same entity. So I don't know if this is enough, but this is just give us a little bit of taste of the mind, the role of the mind.
Thank you, Menas. Also, as much as I know, because in quantum mechanics there is the element of measurement, that only through measurement an observation can become concretely observed, otherwise it is in some form of potential. And then it is asked, well, who is the observer, which becomes a very much, a kind of a spiritual inquiry. Who is the one? I know that there are famous experiments that they try to put all these particle sensors to see if this counts for an observer, and of course it didn't. And then they came to the conclusion. So if you can speak a little bit about that, that actually when it is said that the observer concretizes or collapses the wave function, it actually brings the attention to consciousness itself.
So Swami Brahmanandaji just mentioned many important aspects. One most important aspect is the role of observation. I will leave aside the observer. This is the great mystery. Let's just say, and this requires long discussions and maybe a course on Shaivism and a course in Vedanta like you teach here. But the observer is the self. So we'll leave that aside. Who is the self? Let's just say all of us are the self. But then what action does the observer do? In physics, we say the observer asks questions. You just mentioned, for example, if we put a detector in the double slit experiment, to find out which opening the particle went through, because a particle has two aspects. It has a wave aspect and it has a particle aspect. The wave aspect means that it has no boundaries. It can be everywhere or anywhere in the universe. But is it us? Well, actually, it is us. However, because of the mind, we tend to concentrate in specific aspects, and that is so-called, as you just said, the collapse of the wave function. In quantum mechanics, the wave function plays a central role, particularly in the wave mechanics of Erwin Schrödinger, a great quantum physicist from Austria, who actually wrote in a simpler way the way that a particle or an assembly of particles evolves in time, always time enters the picture. And the other aspect there, in terms of the wave aspect, is the uncertainty. And in the uncertainty principle, pushed forward by all the great teachers of quantum physics, including Niels Bohr and particularly Werner Heisenberg, great German physicist. The wave function, if we don't ask the question, if we don't put boundaries as to know what is going on, it's everywhere and anywhere and nowhere. Is it possible that, in fact, the wave function, which is really the particles, is just one of the two aspects of particles? Is it possible that the wave is everywhere and nowhere? Absolutely, yes. And if we contemplate this, it means that we ourselves are everywhere and nowhere, in time and out of time. This is something that Albert Einstein could not stomach, even though the great physicist Albert Einstein got the Nobel Prize for pushing forward a thought experiment that started the revolution of quantum physics. He's one of the main founders of quantum physics. But then he sort of turned against it because he really believed in a Newtonian, rational, specific, particular reality of life. And it turns out that's only half of the picture. So Niels Bohr was actually right, if you can call it right, the views of the great Bohr, who was a student of quantum physics.
Thank you very much, Menas, for joining us. I would like to thank Menas. Menas is very humble, but is a very prominent quantum physicist and contributing with many papers in the world of science and many other things, and he serves this ashram for a very long time. He's the president of the Friends of Shivananda organization, which is an American non-profit organization that works for fundraising for the ashram. And he has a very busy scientific career, and we thank him very much for his deep friendship and for the lecture this morning honoring Swamiji's birthday. Om Tat Sat.
I thank you, Swamiji, and the honor is mine to be able to be in the great presence of all these great beings, in particular to honor Swamiji's birthday. Thank you.
Thank you.
So one more time, we appreciate Dr. Menas Kafatos very much for joining this morning. Let's give him a very big hand. And we wish him great success in all of his studies and teachings and writings. And we look forward to welcoming him back here at the ashram next year, joining us for the special Mahashivaratri celebration, and for Dr. Menas Kafatos to be teaching teachings on Kashmir Shaivism. So let's give him one more big hand. So now we review the schedule for the rest of the day. At 8 o'clock, we'll have the yoga classes, the TDCs on the garden platform, and the guest on the Bay platform. 9:50 the brunch, 11 o'clock the ashram welcome and history tour, leaving from reception. Today at 12 o'clock for the guests we have a special workshop continuing the program with Swan Michel on sound therapy introduction and sound healing journey, and this will be in the Annapurna Devi house. 4 o'clock the yoga classes, 5:50 the dinner, 7 o'clock the chanting of the Bhagavad Gita followed by the chanting of the Hanuman Chalisa. And tonight we begin the program with Daniel Orlansky and Yoga and Qigong. So now we conclude with the final prayers and the Arati, page 98. Om, Om, Om. Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Peace Peace Peace. O adorable Lord of mercy and love, let us abide in Thee forever and ever. Om Bolo Sadguru Shivananda Maharaj Ki Jai. Om Bolo Swami Vishnudevananda Maharaj Ki Jai. Please stand up for the Arati. You're welcome to follow on page 118. Om Jai Arati Vigna Vinayaka Vigna Vinayaka Shri Ganesha Jai Arati Subra